That's why he says
That's why I say there's a
his
right
is-
and a wrong way.
Right.
Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Nan Bunce. Live on Cascade, 1333 Cascade, in Boulder, here in Boulder.
You're married?
I am married to Gerry Bunce, who has also been interviewed.
Can you tell us a bit about your family?
Well, our immediate nuclear family is composed of Gerry and myself and two out-of-the-nest kids. The oldest being Arwen, and she and her husband are now living in, Todd, are now living in Portland, Oregon. And they, over the last year and a half, adopted a little Ethiopian grandson for us, specifically for us. Whose name is Demose, and we're just wild about him. And we have a younger son, younger than Arwen, Max, he's 4 years younger than Arwen, who was our vector, I guess, for Boulder. Exactly. Although we had, and Gerry is a physicist.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
My husband Gerry is a physicist, and actually we knew about Colorado quite a few years before our son Max came to school here, because we spent a couple of summer vacations at Snowmass. The whole family went. It's the site of a physics conference, and really enjoyed that. We spent a year in France, in the basically just at the foot of the Alps near Geneva in Annecy, and that really reinforced for us that we really liked the mountains. We're mountain people. We were living on Long Island, and that's a sea type situation. And it was very nice, but it just didn't grab any of us. So we really loved the mountains right from the get-go. Max and Arwen and I had learned to ski while we were in France, and the kids became marvelous skiers. And Max really got into outdoor kinds of activities, starting with skiing, but then moving on to climbing, to mountaineering, to ice climbing. He's done just about everything, most of it in Colorado to start with, and he's now an international mountain guide. He just summited Everest last spring. So we're pretty proud of him, but we're not ready to follow quite that far. I also have my folks here, my parents. They came up to live near us from near Mobile, Alabama. That's not where they were from. That's not where I grew up. I grew up in Michigan and attended the University of Michigan, which is where I met my husband Gerry, who is also a Michigander. But my parents needed to move closer to somebody. We were the logical people because I'm the oldest, and we were already retired at that time.
Can you give us their names?
That's Roger and Margie Dean. They are now living at the Meridian. They have a lovely little apartment there with probably one of the best views of the Flatirons around. It's just marvelous. I don't know how they fell into that one. And they are just, they're totally taken with Boulder now, with the mountains, they were very frightened when we first brought them up. Didn't give them too much of a choice in the matter, but they were just sure that they were coming into the far north, and they were just not going to be able to go anywhere, do anything, because it was just going to be cold and ice and snow. And they just can't get over the fact that Boulder is actually probably fairly close to where, in terms of climate, to where they were living down south. So,
Do they like the meridian?
they like the meridian. They love the sun. Unfortunately, they don't get around too much, so we try and get them out as often as we can to the farmers market, for instance. But I wish it had been a little bit earlier, and we could have taken them to a lot of the talks and concerts and so forth that we go to. The Meridian does provide transportation to, for instance, the faculty music program, and they often take advantage of that.
Can you give us a bit of your background?
Well, I grew up near Detroit, just outside of Detroit. Gerry is from Pontiac. I was from Detroit. My folks moved away to Pittsburgh and then to Cincinnati before they headed down south to Fairhope, Alabama.
They moved because of your father's occupation?
Yes. They moved. I never moved. I grew up and started school, Michigan, University of Michigan. Before they moved, they started moving around more. I have a sister and two brothers, and actually we will probably, within the next year, hopefully, given the economy, have one brother and my sister join us here in the greater Denver area at any rate. Both my sister and my brother are retired now also, and would very much like to move out here.
Could you give us the names of those three people?
Okay, my sister is Robin Castenholz. She and her husband Bill have two daughters, one of whom is also in the Pacific Northwest in Bend, Oregon, and the other one is going to stay back in Ohio, where they have been living for a long time. My brother is Roger Dean Jr., and he lives in Michigan up in the Thumb, and he also is getting ready to move out, has decided that he would like to be nearer family, and he's also big into mountains, into sports. And that has been the major draw, I think, for all of us, that we love the mountains, we love hiking, we love skiing, we love just about everything we can do around here.
And your other brother?
My other brother is a Southerner. He's down in Florida, and he and his wife have 3 kids down there, and they'll probably stay down there. We haven't even enticed them up to sample Boulder yet. They think it's just too cold.
And his name?
His name is Craig and Rodine.
What do you like about Boulder?
Oh, gee. A lot. We spent a year in France, in the Alps, and I think that really confirmed for us the fact that we love mountains. Boulder, we learned about and to love when our son was here in school. We had been seriously thinking about going to France to live in Annecy, but had second thoughts both about being permanent expats ourselves and also that it would be hard for the 2 kids to get over there. We definitely wanted to move from Long Island because none of us really appreciated it, and the kids really didn't like visiting us where we lived there. And we knew that we needed to be somewhere where they would come. And Boulder is very clearly that. now with the house, they come as often as they can. And hopefully, I'd like to think that the house will stay in the family once we're gone. Whether as a permanent residence or a vacation place, I don't know. Love the sun, love the mountains, we like seasons. We're very much seasonal people. We like summer, fall, winter, spring. We lived in a small village on Long Island, and it was too far from New York City, which we used a lot, but we just really enjoy Boulder as both a city and as a university. We take advantage of the university. We live within walking distance, which is that was another piece of when we were deciding to move somewhere for retirement. We both wanted to be somewhere where we could get around without a car. We downsized to one car when we moved here, and we like to leave it in the driveway just as often as we possibly can. Take buses. It's got a great system of buses here. We do a lot of walking. It's about a mile down into the city of Boulder, maybe half a mile to campus, and we do that on foot just as often as we possibly can. Gerry rides his bike a lot. I keep thinking I should ride my bike a lot, but the hills here really are daunting. I keep saying I'm going to really do just do it, but getting home on the hill is something to think about before you coast down into town. So I don't do that as much as I should.
Are you retired from any particular occupation?
I was a reference librarian at our local public library. And I have to say, I loved being a librarian. I loved being a reference librarian. I was ready to retire from the public. As I get older, I guess grouchier. And I was not sad about leaving it. People often ask me why I don't volunteer at the libraries here. And I guess I kind of feel that I've been there, done that to a certain extent. I'm fascinated with the Grillo Medical Library. And I think at some point I would like to volunteer there doing medical research. I also really like, and we go to a lot of the programs at the Carnegie Library here, which is a history library. And although I keep thinking that I ought to go just sit there for afternoons or whatever and go through stuff. I haven't done that yet, but I use their web page. And I love their programs, and I like local history. There's a lot to learn here. We are not Westerners at all, so everything is kind of new. But it's a fascinating history. I really like that. So.
What do you like about living on the hill?
Whoa. When we were looking for housing around, we told our realtor that, well, both Gerry and I had a list of things that we thought we wanted in a house, in a location, and so forth. They were two rather different lists, first of all, except that we wanted to be in town. And we wanted to be able to do without a car. But in terms of land around the house, just what kind of a house, we loved the house that we had on Long Island, which was the Cape Cod. Thought we wanted something like that, or maybe a Victorian or whatever. But just couldn't agree over probably 6 to 9 months worth of looking, often separately, because we would spend time with our son here, who was injured at that time, separately. And the house that we're in is it was the last house that we looked at, and it was kind of a throw-in. But it's on a northwest corner, and it's just flooded with light, with a gorgeous view of the Flatirons. And we fell in love with it immediately. It started out as just a small 1946 tract type brick ranch, and we decided to just completely redo it, which was a lot of fun. We used a local architect who is into green architecture, which is we also wanted, and it's very Boulder anyway. And just had a lot of fun over a year and a half or so of redoing the house. It's now a modern house, but we love it. It's got wonderful spaces. And one of the big things about those wonderful spaces is looking out over the Flatirons. And actually, that's something I've been out at 30th Street Mall, for instance, which is just a mall like all other malls, basically. But except that when you come out of a store and you look west, there are these wonderful mountains there. I mean, it's just the most, oh, I just can't get enough of that. And but anyway, the house that we found was on the hill, and we had several people tell us, careful. And even our son, who was living here at the time, who was a grad student, vetoed a couple of places that we had looked at because they were right next to large student housing. This is just far enough away. We still get quite a lot of noise and a certain amount of red cups on the street, on the property, and so forth. But it's also been fascinating to us. We've got students coming by all the time. We've got a big garden. We've started putting out extra produce on our front stoop, too many zucchinis, and the kids just think it's the greatest thing to come by and pick up a bat-sized zucchini. We don't know what they do with them. But I think we've got a reasonable, kids change all the time, so you can't say that, you know, it's the same kids, but we like the activity of the students. We don't like some of the stuff going on, and we are part of the Hill residents who, you know, will really start beating up on kids or housing or whatever when things get loud and noisy, particularly at 2 and 3 in the morning. But being close to the university also has just been marvelous for us.
Who was the architect you used?
Dominique Gelfand.
How did you see?
Getliff. Yeah, where'd Gelfand come from? Getliff. Dominique Getliff.
How did you choose him?
Actually, I went online. The house was completely done while we were still living on Long Island. And I got online and looked up green architects in Boulder. Got a list, and we kind of went through them, calling them first, just getting an idea. Our son helped us out a little bit by visiting 1 or 2. We picked 3 out of them to actually meet with and describe what we wanted. This was after we had the house and had some idea, but not too much of what we wanted to do with it. Dominique is French, so we had an instant bond there because we could say, well, we really like French country architecture kind of thing. But he's also very much of a modernist, if you want, along with the green. And he just really took our requests and went to town with it, and we just loved what he did and what he was doing, and just had a great time working with him, getting this house into a shape that we just adore. And that also has enough room for all of us. We can have friends and we can have the kids, and yet it's not too big. We didn't expand the house at all, interestingly enough. No scrape, no pop, but just a really great house, and we love it.
Could you give us a bit of a talk about your philosophy of life?
Well, I think that my husband Gerry and I actually agree pretty closely on how we view our life. We've always done a lot of traveling. We've not been, although we had a good time redoing our house together, we have not been into where we live as much as what we can do, and we don't have a lot of material possessions. For instance, we got our first couch only about 8 years ago, but both of us think that it's really important to be in a place or in places that make us happy, that feel good, and that offer enough for us to do on a physical level, but also an intellectual level. I really missed being able to go to talks and various functions and so forth while we were living on Long Island. We were just too far away to make that an everyday kind of thing. And we both are just getting a real kick out of geology, for instance, which, being in Boulder, I don't think you just can't even look around, let alone walk around, without seeing that where stuff came from is just really important. So we've been attending classes. We've made a fair number of friends through those classes and through hikes and walks and talks and so forth. I think what we really enjoy and what is important for me as we get older is having enough to do to keep us busy both mentally and physically. And Boulder is just a marvelous spot for it. Also, where we lived before was a very conservative area, and I must say that after 30 years, having to kind of keep my mouth shut sometimes about politics and other things, Boulder is a real release for us. So we are appreciating Boulder's liberalism, even though we realize that it's perhaps not totally the real world.
Well, thank you. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
This has been fun.
That's the end of this tape.